I was 24 years old, standing in my childhood home, clearing out the last of my grandmother's belongings after her funeral, when I found it, tucked deep inside a cigar box full of dusty, forgotten trinkets. A silver lighter, a tarnished cufflink, and a faded photograph of a handsome man I didn't recognize was a small, yellowed envelope. It was addressed to my grandmother, Clara **, in handwriting I didn't know, and sealed with brittle, dark red wax. The date stamped on the postmark, October 5, 2001. That date was seismic in my life because it was precisely 3 weeks ** after ** the day my mother, Diane **, and I buried my father, Mark **, who supposedly died in a catastrophic hiking accident in the Himalayas. For 21 years, I had grown up with a ghost, a heroic figure whose tragic death defined our small family. My mother was the grieving widow, stoic and protective. I was the son who never knew his dad. But that letter, postmarked ** after * his funeral, ripped that entire reality apart. The moment I broke the seal and read the messy, frantic script inside, the foundation of my life collapsed. It wasn't a condolence note or an old business letter. It was a desperate plea for help, signed simply, **M***. The letter explained in painstaking detail that my father hadn't died in a tragic accident. He had faked his own death and fled the country, citing vague but terrifying threats. The biggest bombshell: he wasn't dead. He was alive, hiding somewhere in South America, and he needed my grandmother's help to finally return. My entire life was a performance, a 21-year-long, elaborately staged lie orchestrated by the two people I loved most. The hero I mourned was a coward. The grieving mother I protected was a calculating conspirator. And my dead father was alive all along. Was I wrong to secretly use that letter to track him down, expose the massive lie, and fundamentally shatter my mother's carefully constructed world of grief and protection? Tell me honestly, if your parents' entire life was built on a lie, would you expose the truth or let the lie stand for the sake of their fragile peace? My name is Ethan **, and until I was 24, I believed I had a fairly dramatic, yet clear, family narrative. My father, Mark, was an accomplished geologist and adventurer who died, heroically and suddenly, doing what he loved, exploring a remote pass near Everest. My mother, Diane, channeled her grief into raising me, becoming a strong, focused woman who never remarried, dedicating her life to preserving Mark's memory. We lived a quiet, comfortable life in a suburban town, visiting my grandmother, Clara, often. Diane was a creature of routine and control. Everything in our house was pristine, organized, and precisely placed. Her emotional world was equally structured, a deep, almost untouchable reservoir of grief for Mark that made her sympathetic to everyone, but completely inaccessible to me. If I ever asked too many questions about his death, the details were always sparse, the body supposedly unrecoverable. She would shut down, her eyes clouding over with that familiar, stoic sadness. My grandmother, Clara, was Diane's mother and the polar opposite. Clara was bohemian, messy, and filled with restless energy. She never cried about Mark, not even at his funeral. When I was a child, she would simply sigh and say, "That man always did love a dramatic exit, Ethan." I always thought it was her way of coping with the absurdity of his death, but now I know it was something else entirely. The reason the family needed clearing out was simple. Clara had passed away peacefully in her sleep 3 weeks ago. Her house was a chaotic wonderland, full of finished projects, exotic textiles, and junk drawers packed with oddities. The cigar box I found was in her antique writing desk, buried beneath old receipts. The handwriting on the envelope was urgent and scratchy. When I broke the seal, the smell of old paper and something metallic, like seawater, filled the air. I unfolded the single sheet of paper. The date at the top read, October 1st, 2001. Mark's funeral was on September 15th. The letter read, Clara, I know this is risky, but I had to get a message out. The funeral bought me time. The accident was convincing, but I need you to hold the line with D. She was supposed to be my escape route, but she panicked. Everything is compromised. I'm out, but I'm not safe. I have the package, but the details are still sticky. I need the money D thinks I left for the kid, but I need it untraceable. Tell D I'll contact her in a year when the heat is off. Until then, I am dead. Don't tell Ethan the truth, ever. I can't risk them finding me through him. Please be my last safe port. I'll reach out when I can. The stakes are everything. Tell Ethan I loved him and died a hero. It's better this way. M. The words blurred. Mark, the package, the threats. The most crushing part was realizing that my mother hadn't been a grieving widow. She was an accomplice who panicked. And the money, the small trust fund I thought was my father's legitimate savings, was his getaway cash. I didn't confront my mother immediately. I couldn't. The lie was too immense, too deep. Confronting her would mean blowing up her entire identity, and likely mine. I needed to understand the scope of the conspiracy. I started digging. I took a sabbatical from my job. I'm a data analyst, ironically, specializing in tracing financial anomalies. I focused my skills on tracking the untraceable. First, the photo. The handsome man in the cigar box photograph wasn't Mark. It was Mark's identical twin brother, Michael ***. Mark had told us he had a twin who died in childhood. Another lie. Next, the money. I found discrepancies in the small trust fund. It wasn't invested in blue-chip stocks, as my mother always claimed. It was transferred, in small, complex installments, over a decade, to various shell companies registered in Panama and the Cayman Islands. The beneficiary of the final shell company was a numbered Swiss account. My mother, always meticulous, suddenly looked like a complex puppet master. I started watching her more closely. Her grief now looked like performance anxiety. Her stoicism was the effort of maintaining an iron grip on a devastating secret. I traced the payments back to the source, an obscure, high-risk commodities firm Mark had worked for before his death. The firm specialized in mineral rights in unstable regions. The key word in Mark's letter, the package, started taking a dangerous shape. It wasn't just a simple disappearance. It was high-stakes corporate espionage or theft. I finally confronted my mother with the first piece of evidence, the photograph of Michael, the dead twin. We were having dinner, our usual quiet, reserved meal. "Who is this, Mom?" I asked, placing the photo on the pristine white tablecloth. Her hand, reaching for her wine glass, froze midair. Her face went pale, then violently red. "Ethan, where did you get that? That's irrelevant. He looks exactly like Dad, Mom, except Dad told me his twin died in childhood. This photo is signed, M. with love, 1999. She launched into a practiced lie about how Michael had been a difficult subject, a painful reminder, and Mark had wanted to spare me the sorrow. But the composure wasn't there. The cracks were showing. I let it go, waiting for the right moment to deliver the final blow, the letter itself. I needed more than just the letter. I needed an address. I focused on the Swiss account. Using my professional network, I managed to trace one irregular, large withdrawal from the account 2 years ago. The withdrawal was made via a non-corporate, low-security ATM in a coastal town in Ecuador. I had him. The dead man was alive in Ecuador, and using the money he stole to live a quiet life, possibly waiting to return. The plan formed quickly. I would fly to Ecuador, find the ATM location, and try to find a pattern. I was doing this completely alone, funding the trip with my own savings, desperate to find the truth that had been buried for 2 decades. I told my mother I was taking a long, overdue vacation to clear my head after Grandma Clara's death. She looked relieved. She saw me as grieving, not investigating. I arrived in Ecuador, a world away from my structured life. The coastal town was small, bustling, and hot. The ATM was in a small, dusty bank branch. I showed the faded photo to local shop owners and waiters. Most shrugged. Then, at a small cafe that served strong, dark coffee, the owner's eyes widened slightly when I showed him the photo. "Marco," he said, tapping the glass, "he moved a few years ago, used to live up near the old lighthouse, very quiet, kept to himself. He said he was a writer. Where did he go?" I asked, my heart hammering. He left a forwarding address with the post office 2 weeks ago. Said he was finally going home. Somewhere cold, he said. He looked nervous, like he was running again. 2 weeks ago. He was finally going home. To my home. To the quiet suburban town where my mother lived under the pretense of widowhood. I knew then that my mother was expecting him. The game was up. I had to get back before my dead father walked through the front door. So that's the situation I was in. I had the truth, the address in Ecuador, and the timeline, but my mother was about to reunite with the man who staged his death, while still grieving his memory publicly. I could call the local police, expose the corporate fraud, and ruin both my parents, which would be legal justice. Or I could rush home, deliver the secret letter, and confront both of them privately, demanding the truth about the package, and why my life was sacrificed for their escape. Before I tell you what I chose to do, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have prioritized legal justice and immediate exposure, or private confrontation to understand the emotional and corporate stakes of the 21-year lie? Seriously, let me know what choice you would have made right there. I chose the private confrontation. Legal justice would come later, but I needed the emotional truth first. I booked the first flight back, a frantic 30-hour journey that gave me just enough time to beat a commercial flight from Ecuador. I arrived home exhausted, angry, and cold. My mother was waiting in the living room, calm, poised, but brittle. She had lit Mark's favorite cedar candle, a gesture I now recognized as part of the performance. "Ethan, you're back early. Did you have a good trip?" she asked, her voice light. I walked straight past her, dropping my suitcase in the hall. I went to the antique writing desk, pulled out the yellowed envelope, and placed it next to the cedar candle. October 5th, 2001, Mom, 3 weeks after the funeral. This is the last letter Grandma Clara received from him. He said you panicked. He said he was alive. He said he was gone because the stakes are everything. I've been to Ecuador. I know he's been hiding under the name Marco for years. And I know he sent a forwarding address 2 weeks ago because he's finally coming home. The composure shattered instantly. My mother didn't scream or cry. She simply deflated. The perfect lines around her eyes dissolved, and she looked older, terrifyingly vulnerable. "He shouldn't have sent that," she whispered, picking up the letter with shaking hands. "Clara promised to destroy everything. Who is coming, Mom? Mark or Michael? And what is the package?" That's when the doorbell rang, a single, decisive ring that cut through the silence. My mother flinched violently. "He's here," she said, her voice barely audible. "It's Mark, and Ethan, you have to understand. The package wasn't corporate espionage. It was the only way out." She moved toward the door. I grabbed her arm. "No, we face this together. You don't get to manage this truth anymore." She opened the door. There stood the man from the photo, the handsome, haunted version of my father. He looked older, his face lined by sun and fear, but it was him. "Mark," he looked at my mother, relieved, then his eyes fell on me. He froze. "Ethan," he said, his voice rough. You're not supposed to be here." I held up the letter. "I found this. You told Grandma Clara to lie to me. You told her to tell me you died a hero. I need the truth, right now, before I call the police." My mother sank onto the couch, her carefully built world collapsing around her. Mark looked around the pristine living room and then at the cedar candle. He looked defeated. "I didn't steal money," he began, his voice flat. "I stole diamonds, blood diamonds. My company, the commodities firm, was running a smuggling operation, hiding the trade under mineral research. I was their geologist. When I realized what I was doing, I tried to expose them, but they caught me. They threatened you. They threatened Diane. They said if I didn't disappear permanently, you would both die." He explained that his twin, Michael, wasn't a real person. It was a carefully constructed identity mark used in corporate circles to hedge risks. The funeral was necessary to show the criminal network he was gone. My mother was supposed to help him secure the money for his escape, but she panicked after the funeral because she realized she couldn't simply vanish with him, leaving me behind. So she played the widow, and he went into hiding with the package, a small but immensely valuable cache of untraceable, illicit diamonds, which he intended to use as leverage against the firm to buy our safety. The firm eventually dissolved, the heat died down, and he finally felt safe enough to come home, returning the diamonds to a designated receiver who guaranteed his immunity. It was a complex truth. My father was a thief, but he was a thief who stole to save our lives. My mother was a liar, but she lied for 2 decades to keep me safe from shadowy corporate killers. The life I mourned was a necessary sacrifice. I didn't call the police. The corporate firm was long gone, and the diamonds were, according to Mark, no longer in his possession. The threat was gone. The immediate aftermath was brutal silence. The performance was over. My mother was not the stoic widow. She was an exhausted accomplice. My father was not the dead hero. He was a haunted fugitive. I forced them into family therapy, which quickly became the only place where the truth could breathe. It took years to process the betrayal and the immense weight of their sacrifice. I realized their love for me was real, but their method was toxic. They valued my safety over my emotional stability, creating a lie that defined my entire childhood. I didn't ruin my mother. I saved her from the solitary burden of maintaining the secret, and I didn't expose my father to the world. Instead, I gave him a second chance, not as the hero, but as the flawed, human father I never knew. He didn't return to the family home. He moved to a small apartment nearby, quietly reintegrating into a life of anonymity. We started slowly, building a relationship based on honesty, finally shedding the heavy, suffocating weight of the spectacular lie. I still sometimes look at the yellowed letter and wonder about the man I thought I lost. But now, I know the truth, and the man who was dead is finally alive to me. Like this video, if you believe a lie told for love is still a betrayal. Subscribe for more stories about uncovering massive family secrets. And share your final thoughts on my father's decision to fake his death in the comments section below. I'll see you all in the next story.